Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of Watch Out for the Lucky by Too Much Sunshine on AO3. Chapter 9. Red, watch out! Watcher shouted, landing roughly on the concrete roof. He used the momentum from the landing to push himself into a faster run. Through the gravel under his boots, Though the gravel under his boots caused him to lose his footing a bit upon takeoff. He stumbled, but kept his eyes focused on the hero currently putting the finishing touches on a dust machine, oblivious to the world. Unfortunately, the villain that they were all currently fighting had the hero in his sights and certainly did not want them to finish it. To be fair, if he had ice powers and some hero was building a superheater real time, he would also be quite worried. But the villain currently creating a barrage of ice spikes and compacted snow to cover the hero was also something Walter personally would not like to be happening at this time either. The hero looked up upon hearing his name, goggles strapped onto his head, hands covered in dust. He looked slightly frazzled, being this close to the action. Typically, Redstone would come along to the fights to get close enough to find the villain's weaknesses, sneak away and hide until he made a contraption that could help defeat them. That's not to say he couldn't fight. He could fight very well, but he knew he was most useful with his full attention elsewhere. And that's how they find themselves here, with Redstone with a palm of dust in one hand and some rectangular contraption in the other, while the villain, known as Snow Major, suspended himself mid-air with towers of slick compacted ice. He thrust his hand up to the sky, generating a deadly-looking cloud of swirling ice and snow. At any moment, when he decided it was deadly enough, he would throw it towards Redstone, if not killing him, then seriously injuring him. He had watched as snow cackled upon finding Red's hiding place. He had been on the ground covering a few unlucky bystanders with his wings, as Snow was hurling big ice spikes and waves of snow against the Big Eye Bank. Tycoon had been taking shots with his bow whenever he could withstand the freezing wind and the ice. Both Mighty and Moonlight had to back up to take care of a few injuries they had sustained earlier in the multi-hour-long battle. Shuffling the citizens down a secluded alley, he ran back to Prime Street, hoping to buy Red some more time. After the first hour of the fight, Redstone had finally told them all he had an idea that could take Snow Major down, and he needed cover. It was something he could latch onto the villain and hopefully make his powers less strong. The only problem was making sure Redstone wasn't seen while he was busy engineering the device. At some point, Snow Major's plan changed from robbing the bank to just causing as much damage as possible just to be a problem. He flew into the air, presumably to assess his surroundings to find something else to destroy, when he suddenly paused his ascent. He had raised himself over the tallest skyscraper on Prime Street, freezing himself next to the tower with a loud cackle. The hero could hear from the streets below. He felt his blood run cold. That's where Redstone was hiding. His wings snapped from his back, thrusting himself into the air without a second thought. Racing to the top of the tower before snow could harm Red, Tycoon was at the base of the pillar, taking shots into the air, trying to knock the villain loose. But every shot was coming up unlucky. As he was flying up, he watched as Snow raised his arm, creating a spike of ice from thin air. A wicked smile graced his face as his piercing blue eyes stared Redstone down from above him. He pulled his arm back along with the spike, ready to javelin it right for Redstone along with the rest of the dangerous cloud of ice. Which leaves him here, running towards Red, hoping to search him. hoping to reach him before the ice spike that had just left Snow's hand did. He couldn't see behind Red's goggles, but he could tell his eyes widened by his eyebrows rising as the ice got closer and closer, ironically frozen in place. His hands continued to move around the object, even without his eyes looking at it, shoving redstone dust into places while snapping wires together before shutting the backplate harshly. He was a few feet away when redstone finally moved. The villain had created more ice, finally shooting everything they had at them. But before any of the spikes could hit anyone, Red simultaneously threw his device over his head at the villain while he dived for Watcher, knocking them both over as Watcher threw his wings over them as the rain of ice showered down on the two. He made sure to push Red to the ground under him and cover him up as much as possible. His wings took the brunt of the ice luckily. He could barely feel the ice hit the impenetrable limbs. As the ice stopped raining, his ear feathers twitched upon hearing a not-so-distant scream. Lifting himself off his team member, he quickly made sure he was unharmed before standing to look at the villain. Whatever Red had thrown at them was a perfect hit. It was hooked onto Snow's shirt, then sprouted tendrils of wires that wrapped around the villain, keeping them still while also what he could only assume heating up to keep the winter powers at bay. Snow Major was shifting every which way to try and get free, trying to throw the device off, but every time he reached for it, another wire held his arms down. The pillar of ice that was holding him up was slowly melting the warmer the villain got. Redstone's theory had been proven correct. He felt a smile stretch across his face as he helped Red to his feet. Checking over the other a bit longer revealed a few scratches, weakly dripping blood from being pushed onto the gravel, but otherwise was fine. With a soft pat to the back, he walked over and stepped off the building, stretching his wings out to catch air. He drifted to the villain, who had enough self-awareness to recognize he had been caught. A scowl plastered on his face. He never stopped struggling, but it did get less and less strong. Following the villain as they descended down the melting tower, he met with the rest of the team on the ground. Snow Major at their feet sitting as they couldn't stand with the wires wrapping around them. The blue-haired villain was still weakly trying to escape the wires, wiggling and scoffing swears. Looking up from the captured villain, he smiled at Mighty, Moon, and Tycoon as they surrounded the defeated villain. Redstone flew in, landing right next to him, releasing the trigger of his grappling gun. He pulled his goggles off his eyes up into his hair. His cheeks were flushed with excitement and confidence as the group congratulated him on the success of his mid-fight invention. They were so caught up in their excitement, they didn't hear the footsteps walking into their circle. Starvoid interrupted their circle with a clearing of his throat, announcing his arrival. The group startled, then parted, letting the older hero grab the villain. And, with some help from Red, they detached the wires, replacing them with cuffs. The villain stayed silent the whole time, with a blatant scowl, even as Starvoid dragged them off into an association police car. The group watched as the hero opened the back doors, shoving the villain in and shutting the doors. He then hopped onto the front seat with the driver as protection. Once the doors were shut, the car took off down the crumbling street to the secure villain jailhouse. The team was then left alone in the middle of the collapsing remnants of the street and surrounding buildings. The previous excitement suddenly left them all. It was quiet as they all took in to damage. The ice was melting, leaving everything wet and dripping. The rubble under their feet crunched when they shifted, and every once in a while, some more would fall off in the building, hitting the streets below. It was always eerie after a large-scale hero fight. A mixed feelings, a mix of the feelings that came along with winning a hard, grueling battle, but also the crestfallen thoughts and scenes of so much that hurt in the process. They didn't know how many people had been hurt yet, or the possibilities of deaths as well. All because some villain with stronger powers wanted to try and rob an impenetrable bank vault. Suddenly, he heard a small giggle from behind him. It was getting louder and louder until he was forced to turn around. Pulling his wings in tight, he looked for whoever would find it appropriate to laugh at such destruction. Behind himself, he found the culprit, the newest addition to their team, Tycoon. The hero had his hand up, trying to stifle his giggles. Eyes closed in humor. Beside him, Moon was starting to catch up in the giggles as well. Starting slow, and then catching speed along with Tycoon. The two, every once in a while, would look over to him and start giggling harder. "What, may I ask, is so funny?" he heard himself ask. This just got them to actually start laughing without hesitance. This then caused Redstone and Mighty to look from the other two to him and back, and then also start giggling. Finally, Tycoon spoke up. He opened his honey brown eyes and gazed at him amused. Wait, that's not right. Where are his sunglasses? Did he lose them in the fight? Green felt his feathers ruffle. "You flew up the cover, Red, so quickly. You scrambled your way up there so quickly. It was like watching a lightning bolt fly." Tycoon laughed, even if his analogy didn't make much sense. The rest of the group also started laughing, alleviating some of the depression from the disaster. Watcher could feel his cheeks light up under his mask, and Red's face also started to match the color of his namesake, though both eventually started laughing along with them. Well, if he would have been paying attention to his surroundings, maybe I wouldn't have had to. He laughed back. With Mighty and Moon getting hurt, and you helping citizens, Redwind would have been in deep shit had I not done something. Hey, I'm perfectly capable of helping myself, thank you. He huffed playfully. I'm sure that's why you dove under my wings, huh? He laughed along with everyone else as Red spluttered, embarrassed. Watcher! He shouted, punching him in the shoulder. Yet he didn't feel a thing. This is an odd dream. He'd rather his friend not hit him. Wait. He shot up in bed, his chest pulling in oxygen as quickly as he could make it move. He had sweat beading down his brow and hands shaking as he ran them through his hair in an effort to calm himself down. What was that? He snapped his head back to his alarm clock. 3 minutes till he was set to wake up. Great. A perfect way to start the busiest day of his life. Still trying to get his breathing in check, he flopped back onto his pillows with a hand on his chest. In, out. In, then out. That was one weird-ass dream. He was, what? The long-lost hero Watcher? And he was in some battle alongside Team Bodum? He must really be full of himself if he feels he has any sort of power like Watcher, let alone be in a group that is that powerful. Ugh. He slapped his arm over his face. Scar would be so upset if he knew Green was dreaming about his missing family members. Like, seriously, he hears about Scar's tragic backstory and immediately fills the spot with himself. Sure, he was missing family too, but that didn't give his subconscious the right to place himself in Scar's. His feathers ruffled thinking of Scar being a part of his family. Oh, so that's what this was. A flock thing. Yet another one of his bird traits coming back at the wrong time. He hung out with Scar like 3 times, and now his brain is calling for them to be flockmates. He had distinctly lost the call for flock when... His train of sad thought was abruptly cut off when his alarm finally sounded through the room. Groaning, he rolled over, slapping the top of the clock harshly, causing it to almost fall on the floor. It was an hour or so before sunrise, aka way too fucking early, but he promised Scar he would get ready with him, so out of bed he must get. If only he could make himself get up. The pull of his soft, warm covers was almost enough to say screw it, and let the consequences meet as they may. But that wouldn't be a very good first impression to Hermit Empire. Okay, fine. He threw his arms into the air, the argument with himself getting heated. He'll get up, but just shower and put his clothes on. He can do his hair and stuff when Scar gets there. Perfect plan. He shifts to sit up in his bed. He sits up in his bed. The covers fall off himself and pooling around his waist and wings. Ugh. Those are going to need a good preening too if he wants to look presentable in front of half the city. With a tired sigh, he pulls the blankets and the rest of the way off. Swinging his feet off the edge while rubbing his eyes with a yawn. Standing to stretch, he hears a dull thud by his feet, as if something fell off. His room was still very dark, and with his eyes adjusted, when he knelt down to try and pick up the pillar or whatever fell, he had to blindly run his hands by his feet and back and forth. Finally, his claws grappled onto the small object. Lifting it to his eyes, he squinted to make out what it was. He recognized the beak first, then the eyes, then the claws. Oh no! He accidentally dropped Moon! He pulled the bear to his chest with a sad coo. With a silent apology, he placed the stuffed animal back carefully onto his still warm pillow. He knew he shouldn't be so attached to a stuffed animal at his age, but for the longest time, Moon was all he had. So sue him! The pigeon will be treated like royalty. Besides, who was going to say anything about it? It's not like he had anyone who knew him well enough anyways. Gathering the things he needed to take a shower, Green entered the bathroom. He made sure to bring his hero uniform. That had been sent to his room by Cub. It was interesting. Seeing it all finished and put together made it all feel even more real, as if at this point it didn't. But that's neither here nor there. After finishing his quick shower, he made sure to clean his wings extra nice. Usually he wouldn't really bother since it takes so long to dry them, but he's pretty sure he's enough time to blow dry them out. Make sure they look extra shiny and bright. He puts on most of his hero outfit. He left the heeled boots till they were about to leave. He knew that Cub made them comfortable, but he'd rather just wait until after his and Scar's makeup. There were a few changes made to the outfit, so that he noticed were there when he first saw it. That is to say, when he thought about it much later, after he had sufficiently calmed down, he also recognized that he wasn't in the best headspace when he saw it the first time anyways, so maybe he wasn't the best judge of what really changed. It did have less bows, such as the gloves now being smooth all the way up. The one on the back of his neck stayed, but with an added latch so if it came undone, then the top would stay on. The fishnets also changed from orange to light gray, probably to break up all the bright colors. With all of those bright colors, Green was worried about being able to sneak around and actually do his job. But luckily, Cub had sent over the exact same outfit but in black, with long sleeves and pants, and also one with even less coverage. He hoped that was just in case it was like a million degrees and not something he was expected to wear all the time. He was already worried about being covered with what he had. Whatever. He wasn't the designer, and they probably knew something he didn't. Plus, the more he was learning about this, the more he realized more than half of this job was just media attention. The look more so than the act. Lazily fixing his hair in the mirror, he heard a quiet knock at his door. Right on time, if not a bit later than what Green was expecting. Placing his brush on the counter, he turns away from the mirror and makes his way to the front door. His flat was dark, never bothering to turn the lights on, and along with the sun still not being up, he was basically walking around hoping not to run into anything. Another quiet knock sounded just as he reached for the handle. How did he always end up knocking a second time right as he made it to the door? He flipped on the lights while pulling the door open. Scar had one arm still posed to knock, while the other was busy covering his mouth as he yawned. Upon realizing the door was open, he lazily dropped his arms. He was dressed in his new Hawkeye outfit, the one that was slightly changed to look more like Green's. His hair was a right mess. It looked as if he had been running his hair through it for hours. Green grimaced upon realizing he probably did. By his feet he had a black duffel bag with his logo on it. His bow was neatly laid on top. If Green had to guess, in the back was his quiver and shoes, as the man before him did not possess either of those on his person. Green watched as he straightened up a bit, yet still was slumped with obvious exhaustion. His sunglasses concealed his eyes, but if Green were to guess, he'd say that Scar must have some big bags rivaling a raccoon. Suddenly, without word, Scar grabbed his stuff and walked past Green into his flat. Shocked, Green just spun around, watching, and Scar beelined for his couch. "You didn't actually go to sleep last night, did you?" Green snarked, closing the door softly, following behind Scar. "I slept, I'll have you know." His speech was slightly slurred as he spoke. He was clearly more tired than he let in. "I just had to look into the mission a bit more. Old memos and all that. It didn't take too terribly long, just a few hours." He said the last bit quieter, and then the rest before dropping his bag and collapsing with a yawn into Green's couch. "Yeah, I'm sure it was a completely reasonable amount of sleep." He popped his hip to the side to lean against the side of the couch. He tilted himself to look over Scar. He was practically melting into the couch. Head tilted back against the cushions, and Green could only assume his eyes were closed. It was unfortunate, because they both had to get ready before the sun was up. He was tired too, but his shower woke him up nicely. And while he wasn't used to being up this early, maybe that old adage of the early bird maybe had some merit, because Green felt actually quite peppy. "I get the normal amount of sleep from me, pesky bird," he mumbled, still trying to disappear into the sofa. Sighing, Green turned to the clock on the wall. They probably had an hour and a half before they needed to be in Cub's office and picture perfect. That's plenty of time, if they got started now. But looking at Scar, completely exhausted, even if it was probably his own fault, Green couldn't find himself to make him get up. Maybe they could just do everything here. They were already dressed, and hair and makeup could be done on the go. He had done that plenty of times. Flicking his eyes back to Scar, he could see his chest moving slowly, as if he fell asleep. For some reason, it brought a small smile into his face. There had to be a compact mirror somewhere in the stuff Cub sent, or maybe just in the bathroom. With that, he left Scar on his couch to do Scar things, and went back to the bathroom. His hair was mostly dry, but he still needed to blow dry his wings. After that, he would bring all the makeup and brushes he would need for Scar and himself. This way, Scar can sleep for the next 20 minutes or so while he gets his wings done. Closing the door slightly, hoping to lessen the amount of noise a blow dryer makes, he opens the drawer he had seen it in and takes it out. Plugging it in, he twists himself as much as possible and starts the annoying process of drying his damn wings. You have to make sure he doesn't get it too hot, because they are too sensitive and he'll burn quickly, but if it's too cold or far away, then they won't dry at all. He takes about as long and as much flexibility as he expects. The only place he can't really reach is the center of his back, but those feathers are typically quite thin, so it won't take long for them to air dry. Thankfully. He sets the dryer back onto the counter and starts gathering up his makeup and hairbrushes. He basically had the approved looks memorized, at least the ones for himself. He wasn't really sure if Scar had any makeup looks he was allowed to do for Hawkeye, but if he had to guess, it'd be a more masculine version of what he was allowed for Cute Guy, which was fundamentally bullshit, so he couldn't be doing that unless Scar wanted him to. Speaking of Scar, Green used his foot to edge the door open as his hands were full, and left the bathroom to go back to the front room. When he turned the corner heading to the coffee table to set his things down, he noticed that somehow Scar had managed to fall sideways onto the couch. His feet were pulled up as well, and if Green had to admit, he looked very comfortable. Unfortunately, though, they only had an hour before they had to be with Cub awaiting transportation instructions. So quietly, he set all of his products down and knelt before Scar's head. He had his hands up, balled by his softly rising chest. His glasses had been knocked askew, revealing one of his closed eyes, which distinctly Green remarked about how correct he was. Green remarked at how he was correct about his horrendous-looking eye bags. Suddenly, Green's dream from the night before hit him. Supposedly concealed by dark sunglasses worn at all times of the day were honey brown. He knew it wasn't any of his business why Scar wore the sunglasses nowadays, but he couldn't help but be curious if his dream was, well, real. Clearly it couldn't have been real. He's not Watcher, but Tycoon was there. Scar was there. What if he did have honey brown eyes? What if there was some truth in it? No, impossible. It was probably just some weird what-if dreams where he was part of Bodom. Yeah, and his brain just put him in the role of the other guy with wings. That makes sense. Shaking his head to clear his thoughts, he slowly reached down and fixed Scar's glasses, pushing them further up around his eyes until he could no longer see his eye unless he was looking over him. Smiling at his success, he moved his hand from Scar's glasses back to his side before standing up. His smile got wider upon seeing his record player. Listen, he may have been a good guy, but he was not a good guy. He quietly walked over and grabbed a random record from the stack and placed it inside the player. Before turning it on, he made sure to turn the volume dial as high as it would go. Then, when he turned it on, he softly grabbed the needle, and dropped it in the middle of the song. Immediately, a piano melody began blasting from the old speakers. Green flipped around just in time to see Scar leap up from his lying position on the couch at alarming speed with a yelp loud enough to rifle the speakers. He stopped his head around the room looking for the source, only to find Green having trouble standing, holding the player while covering his mouth. When Scar's eyes finally landed on Green, his fearful expression went to one of vague annoyance. And that was Green's last straw. He doubled over, holding his stomach as he laughed hard. His wings flapped along as his cheeks turned red as he used his other hand to turn the volume down on the player. Well, you're definitely awake now, he giggled, wiping the tears from his eyes. He watched as Scar harumphed, crossing his arms over his chest, turning his head away from Green, which just caused Green to laugh more. Coming around the table to sit next to Scar, he pumped their shoulders together, twittering a light laugh to get him to look at him. He could see Scar trying not to smile, especially when he finally turned his head to look at him. He cooed at him, making him finally smile with him. That's cheating. I'm supposed to be mad you woke me up. Scar huffed with a smile. It slowly turned into a yawn that he covered with the back of his hand. Smacking his lips together, and Green got a hold of himself. He turned to look at the coffee table and its plethora of objects. Taking a deep breath, Green finally wiped his eyes one more time before addressing Scar. I need to get you up somehow. I was already nice enough to let you sleep on my couch as I dried my wings. He smiled, grabbing the brush off the table. Now we have to get you ready. Your hair looks like a rat's nest, and I would know. There was one in my old apartment. Okay, ignoring that last part. He pulled a face that suggested he really didn't want to know about it. How long did I sleep? He asked. His voice betrayed that he seemed nervous. His head turned to Green's balcony doors, checking to see if there was any light out. It was only 30 minutes. You seemed like you needed it. Without much thought, Green brought his hands up and started brushing through Scar's hair. It startled them both. Scar whipped his head back to look at Green, who froze in place. Realizing what he had done, well, not completely odd, Green definitely knew who was the flock thing, which made it weird for him. He had no clue what Scar was thinking. He should have at least asked first. I'm sorry, I didn't think. He pulled his hand back, but was stopped when Scar grabbed his wrist, which pulled a startled chirp from him. No, he said a bit loudly, which he must have noticed as he cleared his throat and started again. No, it's okay. You're gonna do my makeup anyways, so might as well just do the whole look, you know? He said kindly with an undertone of nerves. Okay, that is... okay. Glad Scar doesn't think he's weird, but Scar doesn't know this is a flock thing, which makes it still weird. If he brushes Scar's hair, then he will definitely go all birdy and flocky and want Scar to be his best friend forever. Okay, maybe that's a bit far, but it could happen. It's been a long time. It's been so long since he had anybody that his birdie brain is begging him to say yes. But common sense says no. They've literally only known each other for a few weeks. Where did this come from? Well, technically, they have known each other for quite a bit longer than that. But also they were enemies, so that didn't count. Probably. Definitely. Maybe. But on the other hand, or claw, maybe if he indulged a little bit in this flock thing without Scar knowing, then it will go away a bit. Hopefully a lot. But so far his birdie stuff has just been getting worse, not better. But all he could do was hope it would go away, so he might as well give it a shot. Okay, stay still while I fix your hair. After that, I'll do your makeup. He moved his hand out of Scar's soft grasp and back to trying to fix Scar's mane. Scar tilted his head down a bit so Green could reach, which was both kind and insulting. The longer Green brushed Scar's hair out into somewhat of a normal hot guy hairdo, the more relaxed he felt. His wings shifted and let go, spilling off the side of the couch and onto the floor. He could hear himself coo and chitter every once in a while. And once he was done getting his hair to stay perfect, he moved on to his makeup. Do you... Green spoke, but it came out more as a chirp than words, so he cleared his throat and tried again. Do you have a specific look you want? I know we can't do eyes, but you want feminine or masculine, light or heavy? He leaned over to grab some concealer and foundation before looking back to Scar. The poor man looked a little scared, which made Green trill with a small smile. I have no clue. Never really had a chance, so I don't know what I'd like to do. He smiled nervously back at Green, while looking at the products in his hands. Well, what kind of looks have you seen that you like? He unscrewed the concealer and started to dab some onto the dark spots on Scar's face. It was a good thing the hero had shaved not too long ago, from what Green could tell, or else this might be a bit harder. He took a blender and started to smooth those spots out. Scar started to unconsciously twitch as he did, so he brought his other hand up without a thought, holding on to his cheek as he continued. Scar sighed and leaned into his hands a bit, much to his bird-brained delight. I'm not sure. What you did last time to yourself was nice. Don't tell Cub or anyone else I said this, but... He paused and lowered his voice considerably. You know the villain Gigi and her sidekick Walt? Green nodded his head as he pumped some foundation onto a blender and put some on Scar's face. I really like what they do. They both have the same look, even though Walt is non-binary. It's really cool. Green knew who those two were. He supposed if villains had ranking, they would be number 2. Gigi and Walt were a duo who were very focused on taking over the city to turn it into a forest again. Nature to nature or something like that. Since Gigi's power was creating plants from nothing, he supposed that made sense. The city probably created a lot of pollution, and the mayor only seemed to care about making this place bigger. Walt was her right hand, excellent fighter and known assassin. Never known to have a power, though. Green never really ran into them when he was patrolling. They had been on hiatus for a little while now, not causing too much trouble. Their makeup looks weren't too hard to emulate. He couldn't just copy one of them. The media would very much so pick up on something like that. Honestly, from what he remembered from their looks, were the intricate eyeliner type stuff, bold and outstanding, and they both always matched. Green looked into Scar's eyes, or well, his sunglasses. Usually he wouldn't even suggest what he was going to see through the lenses, but actually looking at the glasses, he really couldn't see a thing past them. I could do something similar, Green said, looking back at the light contour he was applying. But it wouldn't really be noticed since you wear the glasses, sadly. Well, he started then stopped, thinking, well, I could take them off and you could do it just for me, he asked quietly. Besides, I have to keep my eyes closed anyways. Green just blinked, then blinked again. He wanted to wear makeup even if nobody would see it? Well, if it made him more confident. Then again, Green didn't know if Hawkeye needed any more confidence, but whatever. It made him feel good. But then what is the harm? And maybe they could try to borrow more from the two villains. Okay, we can do that. Just keep your eyes closed, and after I'm done with that, I'll do the exact same on my face so that way people will still see it. He chirped happily. Ugh, more flock things. Those Scar seemed to be just as excited. Pulling his glasses off, Green instinctively closed his eyes. He made sure to wait a few seconds before slowly opening them again. Just as Scar was told, his eyes were closed. long brown lashes kissing his very obvious eye bags. Green laughed to himself, grabbing the concealer again and getting to work. He chose to go for a dramatic wing with some more intricate yet simple lines around it, along with an orange and pink radiant eyeshadow, finishing off the look with some mascara on his bottom lashes only. He also applied some pinkish tint to his lip. Green leans back to admire his work and smiles happily. Chirping to himself, he grabs the handled mirror from the table and places it in Scar's hand. Okay, open your eyes and look in the mirror. He closes his eyes tightly, but can't keep the smile off his face or the chirps from leaving his mouth. He hears Scar shuffle around, assumingly looking at himself. He hears a click and some more shuffling. You can open your eyes now, Scar said. He sounded happy, so that was a good sign. Opening his eyes, Green's bird's eye was slightly disappointed to see he had covered up his handiwork with those glasses once again. But it was outshined by the pride he felt at Scar's blindingly wide smile. It's perfect, Birdie. You did so well. I don't even know how you were able to do this all so fast. He picked up the mirror again, checking himself out more. Green preened, smiling and chirping happily that Scar, his flocked, likes his preening job. Wait, no, bad bird. He shook his head, clearing his thoughts. He was meant to indulge a little, not a lot. It's a very slippery slope. Wait, how did he do it so fast? Abruptly, he remembered they were on a time limit. Snapping his head back to the clock, he felt his face flush. They had spent 30 minutes doing Scar's makeup, so they had less than 30 minutes for him to get completely ready. He still had to do his wings, and makeup, and hair. He twittered, shocked and anxious. He grabbed the brush from the table and started to brush his hair quickly. He needed to get it into a tight bun at the base of his skull, instead of his normally messy one. He noticed Scar put the mirror down as soon as Green started to chirp. Looking confused as Green started to hurriedly put his hair up in the much too tight bun. Hey, what's the matter? Scar asked, softly grabbing his arms like he finally finished his hair. We have like 25 minutes and I still need to do my makeup and wings. He put the brush down before grabbing similar products to the ones he used for Scar. His wings can be last, because those should be quick as long as he makes them presentable and not so much unusual. Well, Scar started nervously. It gave Green pause, sharing him nervous. Upon seeing he had Green's attention, it seemed to give him confidence. I could do your wings. He leaned over the side of the couch to see his wings still spilled over the side, grimacing at their ruffled yet clean state. While you do your makeup, if it would help? Green froze at the suggestion. Preen his wings? Scar wants to preen his wings? He felt his wings twitch and flap excitedly at the prospect. Grateful chirps and coos escaped his throat. Then he immediately brought his hands out to try and cover her up. How embarrassing. Like, come on! No. He couldn't let Scar preen his wings no matter how long it's been since someone had. He was able to make do just fine on his own for years. 3 years to be exact. Nobody had touched his wings since his family went missing. Well, other than Cub, but that was a low moment he'd like to forget. But they didn't really have the time. He turned his wide eyes to the clock. 20 minutes. Ugh. Look, I know we aren't that close yet. Green felt himself coo sadly without his consent as Scar spoke. He also saw Scar's mouth quirk up into a small smile, but he graciously ignored the sound. Did he know what that meant? Please be a no. But I do know how to preen wings. I might be a bit out of practice, but it wouldn't take too long, he says kindly. but he seemed just as excited as Green's winks and tweets made him sound. But he also looked nervous, like even the suggestion would make Green blow up. And honestly, if it was anyone else asking, he probably would. He didn't know he didn't want to say no, but he didn't want to say yes. He can't lie to himself, and he knows that even though his avian instincts definitely wanted him to say yes, he can't deny that as a whole, he wasn't compelled against it either. They were at the time, and maybe, only maybe, did he miss the feeling of kind hands between his feathers. You don't have to either, Scar interrupted his thoughts anxiously. Green must have taken too long to answer. I could bring your wings now and then maybe do your makeup in the car. I could help you carry all the makeup things, and I'm sure Cub won't mind us being a little late. Though the other heroes are supposed to be there too, so we can't be too late. But don't feel pressured. We can. Scar continued to ramble about options they have, and while usually Green would laugh at his anxious rants, unfortunately, it had the effect of making Green calm down a bit. Lovable idiot. Hard to believe that he ever had beef with this guy on the streets, if this is how he acts normally. With a drawn-out sigh, drops his hands, but keeps his head down. Fine, I'm not trying to catapult myself into bird brain mode, and we don't have much time, so don't worry about making it super comfortable. Just look nice. He said, slightly clipped, without another word or look at Scar. He turned around with his back facing Scar. He heard Scar shuffle as well, probably sitting crisscross like Green. Hesitantly, Green moved his wings off the ground and onto the couch behind him for Scar's reach. He felt Scar slowly place his hand on the outside of his right wing, causing it to twitch, which made him draw his hand back quickly. A sad coo poured from his mouth without his permission, as well as his wings unconsciously following his hand. Are you okay, pesky bird? Scar laughed softly. Green groaned in response, covering his increasingly reddening cheeks in embarrassment. I'm fine. It's been a really long time since I let someone touch them, so I'm not used to it. But my bird brain loves it, so go ahead. I'm going to do my makeup real quick. He changed the subject, grabbing some eye primer and a few brushes. He felt Scar shrug from behind him, placing his hand back onto his wing, starting to actually straighten his feathers. Green was trying to resolutely ignore the calls he was making, knowing bird noises that he hadn't heard himself make in years. He moved on to foundation and eyeshadow, trying to keep his mind off of it. But clearly Scar doesn't have mind-reading powers, as Green hears him clear his throat before speaking up. You said you wanted this just to make them nice, but that probably would impede your ability to fly if they aren't in their proper places. He dug a little bit further into his wings, further than just a tune-up job, but Green didn't stop him. It wouldn't take too long to breathe them perfect. You said you've done this before, so He stops abruptly, pulling the brush away from his eye and looking into the mirror himself. He tilts it to the side to catch Scar's reflection. He looks concentrated, more concentrated than he's ever seen the man, fixing feathers into place with a confident hand as someone who has done this many times before. He goes back to affixing the last touches of his eyeshadow, grabbing his eyeliner next. I trust you know what you are doing to a certain extent, so do what you can. I already cleaned them in the shower, so just go quick enough to look good and do what you know. Green says quietly, and they lapse into silence. Flicking an eye at the clock, they have about 8 minutes left. Good enough for him, but Scar just moved on to his other wing. They can make it, even if they might be a little late. You know, Scar suddenly spoke up, startling Green enough where he almost messed up his intricate liner. I used to do this before every mission for Watcher. He states as if he's not paying attention, which he totally isn't, just saying words as he has his undivided attention of Green's wings. Green stays quiet, opting to listen to what he might say while continuing to finish his look. I was new compared to everyone else, and I'll admit I never met an avian before. We had just come off the new inclusionary treaty a few years prior, and hybrids were finally feeling more welcome in the city. He sighed, fixing a feather that made Green chirp. It had been bugging him for a bit. None of them really trusted me at first. I mean, I got it. They had been a group for 3 years. Then suddenly the council added some kid? But they never made me feel unwelcome. We just all had to learn about each other first. Before every mission, Water needed to preen his wings because he wasn't sure when he would get the next time. He usually let Rather Moon do it for him. Sometimes Mighty as well, but never me. Green himself let out a sad coo as he continued the story. He tried to stifle it, much to Scar's amusement. He was putting the finishing touches on the eyeliner now, pulling the mirror back with a satisfied hum. It looked exactly like Scar's under the sunglasses. It had taken him a year and a half before he finally trusted me enough to let me even touch his wings. He continues, finishing the secondaries and primaries. He said, he laughed, taking his hands off his wings. Green turns around, watching as Scar speaks, smiling and waving his hands. He said that even though I was good with a bro, I was a bit too soft when preening. But after that, I was added to the preening rotation until... He cut off abruptly, the smile dropping from his face, dropping his hand slowly. It's been a while since I did this. But I remember pretty well, so if you ever need help again, I don't mind if you don't. He smiled kindly at Green, but it didn't reach his eyes. Green cooed sadly, but this time he meant to. He flaps his wings, feeling out for how well Scar did, and was very pleasantly surprised. Not only were they set right, but also functional. The feathers were actually in the right places and not just twisted to lay straight. He looked over his shoulder, and they looked perfect as well. It had been a long time, and then even longer, since he had been cleaned and perfectly preened wings. He looked back at Scar with a huge smile on his face. He taught you very well, Scar. Thank you. He hopes that his voice betrayed how grateful he is, wanting Scar to feel better about his loss. It seems to work as Scar brightens up a bit, getting to his feet and offering a hand to Green. Chirping a laugh, Green takes it and is helped up. You are very welcome, Birdie. He bowed dramatically, throwing one hand out. Green barked a laugh, pulling his hand out of Scar's hand to cross his arms. Yeah, don't get a big head, he scoffed with a smile. He looked back at the clock and froze. Scar took notice and looked over as well. They had to leave now. Shit, Green squawked, spurring them both into motion. Green scrambled back to his bathroom, grabbing his boots, heart-shaped glasses, along with some small jewelry that Cub had sent with the outfit. On the way back to the main room, he grabbed his bow and quiver. He saw Scar doing much the same, sitting back on the couch, shoving his shoes on as fast as possible. Green strapped his quiver on quickly, throwing his bow over his head. Leaning against the wall, he pulls on one of his boots, hopping on one foot to get it on all the way before doing the same with his next. He heard some laughing in front of him, and when he looks up, he sees Scar, Hawkeye, perfectly ready to go, laughing at his hops. Scoffing, Green finally gets the shoe on and beelines to the door, purposefully leaving Scar behind. He opened the door, walking into the hallways, leaving the door open because he's not that mean. Hey! He hears Scar yell, followed quickly by footsteps behind him. Without looking back, he hears his door click shut as Scar finally slides up next to him in the hallway. He bumps their shoulders as they wait for the elevator. Careful now, if you mess up my hair, Cub is going to be more pissed than he already is gonna be. Green shoved back laughing when the door dinged and opened for them. They continued to push each other, laughing while walking past the doors. Scar hit the level for Cub's office and then continued to goof off, waiting to stop at the office floor. By the time the doors finally opened, they had mostly calmed down, walking into Cub's office, both with smiles on their faces. When Scar pushed the doors open, though, the smiles dropped as they saw Cub waiting for them with his clipboard in his hand. His face was blank as he watched the two close the doors behind them, except for the blue tint to his eyes. He was dressed differently than he usually was. Instead of the lab coat covered in various sewing supplies, he was wearing a nicely fitted dark blue suit with an orange to pink ombre tie. He had a pen floating around his shoulder, yet he didn't reach for it. Scar and Krian just stood next to each other, looking between each other and Cub, waiting for him to say anything. Krian would admit he didn't know Cub all that well. He seemed like a nice guy. Their unfortunate second meeting had not gone as well as it could have, but with the apology he had been given, he'd like to think that Cub was a bit of an easygoing guy. But the fact that even Scar seemed nervous made him feel the same. "You two are late," he finally said with a sigh. He brought the clipboard up, pulling a few pages up, scanning them, then letting out an annoyed sigh, dropping it to his side. "Neither of you are in any of the approved looks I sent you, but it's much too late to fix that. We have to get down to the lobby with the rest of the heroes." Krian and Scar looked at each other with relieved sighs. So they weren't getting in trouble. Yes! The media was informed last night of the red carpet event today, as well as the release of the pictures from the photo shoot. So they are expecting Cute Guy to be in attendance. Suddenly, Gran felt the weight of the world land on his shoulders. Oh yeah! He almost forgot about the whole "you're a hero now and everyone will be looking at you no matter what" thing. He felt a bit faint at the realization. He swallowed thickly, tuning out the rest of Cub's itinerary to look over at Scar. The man was watching Cub with a serious look on his face, nodding along as he spoke about the next steps for the day. Scar had obviously done things like this before, but he continued listening to Cub. He should probably listen as well, considering he had never done anything like this before. Turning back to try and pay attention to Cub, he tried to focus on his words. The other heroes are going to pair up and go down the red carpet with whoever they want this time, as you two will be last anyways, he said, finally leading them out the door and back into the elevator they came up from. He watched Scar walk with a perfect, smooth, confident glide, standing tall with an easy smile on his face, conviction writhing in the aura around him. Okay, so maybe that's how this is supposed to work. Scar transformed into Hot Guy, and while he still wasn't sure who Cute Guy was, he had to be him now. Okay, that's fine, he can try that. He can just be who he is all the time. Wait, Grian heard himself speak. You said all the heroes are going to be coming. They are all waiting in the elevator. Cub looks up from his board, and Hawkeye looks over to him when he speaks. Yes, it's traditional, Cub says, waving his pen in the air before going back to writing something down. So, he starts, crossing his arms and leaning against the wall. You're telling me that for the next few hours, the streets of Herman Empire aren't being patrolled by heroes for any thug to do as they wish? He asks with a certain amount of sass. He watches as Cub starts writing, staring down at his board, He hears a small snort to the side of him. Upon looking that way, he sees Hawkeye trying his best to hold in a laugh by resolutely staring at the doors. Well, that's above my pay grade to worry about, but I assume the council has some plan in place. Cub huffs something that might sound like a laugh. Green feels a bit proud that he was able to get even that much, looking to Hawkeye to see him smiling as well. The doors finally opened to the first floor lobby. It had been a little over a week since he had been down here. It felt like yesterday, though. There were many heroes down here, all of them in little groups talking among themselves, dressed in their full uniforms. There were quite a few that didn't recognize. Of course, there were the ones he did, such as Starboy, the Queen of Hearts, Tech, and so on. But then there was this group talking around the front of the entrance. One was dressed in a pirate aesthetic, which Green thought was weird, but somehow the man dressed as a Wild West sheriff was weirder. How had he never seen these heroes before? When they walked out of the elevator and into the main room, they suddenly got all quiet, all turning their heads to look at the trio. He made sure to keep his head up like Hawkeye, yet walked slightly behind. Cub led them to the center without looking up from his clipboard, stopping and scribbling before finally addressing the whole room. All right, big day, everyone. You should have read the file that had been sent to your comm. Hopefully you have picked your partners already and have coordinated accordingly. The vehicles and drivers are waiting right outside. Forward to a car. Please mind the media. We're already late, so let's get a move on. He pointed out the door, spurring the heroes to form a line with Hawkeye and them at the end. Hey, by the way, you forgot your lipstick, Cub said, drawing Green's attention. Did I? He asked, touching his lips with a claw. Drawing back, he looked at his glove, seeing no pink tint. Oh no. He turned his widened eye to Hawkeye, who just shrugged with a grimace. He turned back to Cub, who just rolled his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes turned blue, and from his pocket emerged a tube of the lip tint he had been using. It flew into Green's still raised palm, which he automatically closed around it. It's my job to remember what you forget. Don't try too hard, though. He smirked at his confused, grateful stare. He felt slightly embarrassed for forgetting. While they had been in a hurry, he had looked at himself in the mirror and still forgot. But Cute Guy didn't get embarrassed. He did everything with purpose and poise. Probably. I totally meant to do that, he smiled, still opening the bottle, applying it before giving it back to Cub. Both Hawkeye and Cub scoffed and rolled their eyes, yet both were left with a smile. Slowly, the cars filled up and the line got smaller, until finally only the three of them were left. With a deep breath, he grabbed Hawkeye's arm. Hawkeye looked over at him, but he just gave him a smirk. He was flashed a similar smirk back, accompanied by a lax shrug. Cub walked out first, and he instantly heard the click of cameras and the shout of many voices clamoring over each other to ask Cub questions, knowing that Hawkeye would be after him. The final acknowledgement that he was about to have many pictures of himself taken, and have the eyes of the city was finally settling in. It didn't make him quite as nervous as it used to, but it made him pull his wings in more. Old habits die hard. He just, he didn't want to be too in the way. With one final deep breath, he pulled his hard glasses down over his eyes, dousing the world in a pink tint. He nodded to Green. He nodded to Hawkeye, who smiled down at him, urging them forward and out the door outside. Immediately, he was bombarded with what felt like hundreds of flashing lights. Disorientated, he held tighter onto Hawkeye's arm, tilting his head up to try and catch his face. But Hawkeye was looking away from him and into the crowd. He had his other hand lifted, waving and smiling so bright he commanded attention. Green, though, felt his heart in his throat, beating wildly against his chest while he solidly trying to ignore the crowd around them. They were shouting questions, waving microphones at them both as Cub pushed through to give them a path. A few brave reporters shoved at Cub, pushing their cameras and microphones in Green's face, making him pause in his steps, pulling Hawkeye with him. His first reaction was to grimace at the audacity, but he's just some guy, no need to push and be rude. But then he saw the flashes go off and he remembered himself. Oh yeah, he has to be nice and pleasant. He forced a smile onto his face, tilting his head cutely to the side. He opened his mouth probably to say something nice, but probably snarky, but found no sound came out. His wings twitched a bit, which he made sure to snap shut as he realized. With a quiet chitter, he looked from the lady to the microphone back frozen. Then he felt a presence lean over his shoulder. Hello, Kristen. Lovely to see you here. We aren't taking questions right now. Cute Guy and I will see you at the red carpet, dear. Hawkeye spoke, the reporter flashing a red-cheeked smile. He gently grabbed Green's hand that was holding onto his arm and pulled him quietly along, and all but shoving him into the tinted black car. He scooched into the center seat with Hawkeye dropping next to him, shutting the door on many voices trying to gain his attention. Cub had taken the passenger seat, and once the door finally closed, he told the driver to go. The car was quiet. Green, because he was slightly reeling from what just happened. That could have gone better, but honestly, it could have gone much worse. So, that's great. Suddenly, he heard stifled giggle from his side. Shifting to the side, car seats and wings weren't the best match. Made them all squished and, after a while, sore. But he wasn't one to complain, too much anyways. He caught Hawkeye laughing while looking out the window, clearly purposefully not looking at Green. It made him pout. What? He asked, shoving at his shoulder. Unfortunately, it just made him laugh harder. Green pouted harder, crossing his arms and squinting his eyes, trying to piece together what he was laughing at. Never, and I mean never, stop when there's a flood of reporters like that. You just have to keep walking or else they will all pounce, he huffed, finally turning to look back at Green, who had dropped his arms, interested in what he was saying. But isn't it kind of rude to just ignore them? That didn't seem like a hero thing to do. Shouldn't they be super nice and stuff? Make people like them and look good for the media? You aren't ignoring them, though, as long as you smile and wave and maybe shake a few hands. Then you are being polite enough. He pointed finger guns at Green, making him scoff laugh. He supposed that made sense. They do have places to be, so they can't realistically talk to every person in the Empire that wants to talk to them, which really was just a ridiculous thought to have anyways. So many people want to talk to them. Wild concept that he doesn't think we'll ever get completely used to. I guess that makes sense, he hummed, looking past Hawkeye out the window. He usually never drove downtown. It was such a walkable place that there was no reason to, and also totally not because he couldn't afford a vehicle. They were slowly passing tall skyscrapers with people absolutely packed onto the sidewalks. On both sides of the road, a barricade placed with people watching the cars go by, guessing who was in each car. He leaned over Hawkeye closer to the window with wide eyes. That was a lot of people. He knew that the windows were blacked out, so he didn't feel worried about getting close. He caught sight of a few people dressed as heroes. Cosplayers cheered as cars drove by. There were even a few hastily put together cute guy outfits as well. So those pictures really did go viral last night then, huh? Where are we going? He heard himself ask, leaning back to watch Hawkeye and Cub. He heard Cub scoff a laugh along with Hawkeye. He tilted his head back against the headrest. You didn't listen to anything Cub said, did you? He laughed, but upon seeing Green's pout, he barked a laugh and continued. As we were told, he started cheekily. We are going to Sahara Park, which is only a few blocks away. It's where we usually hold Hero Media meetings, since it's close to the center of Herman Empire. There's a huge stage set up with a red carpet set up on the road leading to it. He waved his hand flippantly as he explained. Hawkeye looked down at his lap, fixing his quiver affixed to his thigh, making sure it was tight enough before flicking his eyes to Green. He felt a little scrutinized as Hawkeye raised his eyes over him, making sure he looked right. Where's your respawn bracelet? He asked seriously, much to Green's confusion. He had heard of them and knew there was apparently one in the things Cub had sent, but it didn't really fit his outfit, so he didn't think much about it. But before he could voice as much, Cub had stretched his arm over the back of the seat. A black wristband with a red blinking light between his fingers. Hawkeye laughed, taking it from Cub's hand and reaching for Green's hand. Accepting it, he clasped the band around his wrist. It was tight and sturdy, he noticed, twisting his arm to look at it. What does it do? He asked simply, even if he felt a bit stupid for asking. It's complicated. We can talk about it later when we have time, Hawkeye answered, waving his hand dismissing the thought. The car slowed to a stop. Cub immediately stepping out and closing the door behind him. Hawkeye smoothed out his shirt and pants, making sure that his bow was all round his shoulder just right, and running a hand through his hair. He watched out the window until Cub gave some sort of gesture. Then he placed his hand on the door. He hesitated, looking at Green. He could feel his heart beating. At this point, it couldn't be healthy to have his heart rate up for this high for this long. But the look on Hawkeye's face calmed his nerves a bit more. Listen, just stick with me and everything will be fine. People are going to ask you weird questions, or they might try and touch you. But just stay with me. Tell me and I'll answer and handle anything you don't want to, okay? Now, we need to get out there and have some fun. This is supposed to be fun too. Worry about everything else later. I'm going to come around to your side to open your door for you in a minute, and a little bit of reveal. Green could tell he was rambling a bit. It's nice to know that there's still some scar in Hawkeye. It's also kind of nice to be able to tell as well. With a final nod and smile, Scar steps out of the car, taking Cub's hand to help him out, waving his hand at the roaring crowd with a signature flashy smile. The door was shut behind him, muting the screams of the crowd, giving Green a moment alone. Well, other than the driver. But that guy hasn't spoken a word since they all got in, and Green couldn't even see their face from where he was. Scooting over to the other side of the car to wait Hawkeye's arrival, he watched the crowd. They had plenty of room on either side of the car, the barricade doing their job. All kinds of people were here. Men, women, children, everyone in between or outside of, along with the hybrids of many types, were all reaching over or had their phones out taking pictures and videos. There were a few people on the other side of the fence with professional-looking cameras and lanyards. The more Green looked around, the more he wondered how long in the making this had been. This was very planned out, since the whole road was blocked off, and somehow half the Empire knew the Cub, even though they had only been given the pictures last night. Suddenly, the crowd nearest Green started going wild, pushing against each other against the barricade and reaching their hands as far as they could. He heard the screaming kick Cub, even from behind closed doors. Then he saw Hawkeye around his way. Putting a hand on the handle of his door. Oh yeah, that makes sense then. Hawkeye waited, like the good friend he was trying to be, giving Green one final moment to breathe and have one last moment to himself. Like Hawkeye, he took the time to smooth out invisible wrinkles, make sure his bow and quiver were set just nicely, and his hair and makeup were just so. He even ran a hand through his feathers on his wings and ears just to keep them straight. Then the door clicked, signaling Green's doom. The sunlight illuminated him as the door was opened. The fans were going crazy, yet somehow it felt like the world was holding their breath. Hawkeye reached his hand down, offering to help step out and into the light. With a shaky hand, he placed his claws in his hand, stepping a leg out, followed by the rest of him. He blinked a few times, eyes adjusting from the dark car to the bright outside, along with the cascade of flashes from camera after camera. He had made sure to smile up at Hawkeye as nicely as he could, holding back onto his arm for a moment until he got his footing in the heels. He dropped his arms, grazing his bow down on the way, if only for his own comfort. Turning away from Hawkeye, finally he addressed the crowd. Smiling, or maybe smirking, he raised his hand and waved, and in this specific case, Green finally understands the phrase, and the crowd goes wild. So many people shouting his name and screaming questions was overwhelming. He couldn't even make out most of the words being shouted at him. So he did as Hawkeye said and just smiled and nodded his head. He started walking with Hawkeye around their car and a little ways down the rest of the block, both waving and smiling as people scrambled to try and get their attention. This has got to be the weirdest experience in Green's life. They made it to a sidewalk that was blocked off from the public more so. As stereotypical as it sounded, they truly did have a red carpet over top of it. Against the side of the building on the corner were backdrops of various prints, and in the blocked off street was a swarm of reporters and paparazzi. There was a barricade behind the reporters, with people screaming and reaching for them still. At the end of this two-block street, Green could see the setup of the stage they were heading for, but it was hard to see above the scampering people. He could see some of the heroes that he had seen in the lobby still walking down the carpet, talking to people and getting their pictures taken as well. They truly were the last to get there. He once again held onto Hawkeye's arm, both stepping up onto the sidewalk and onto the plush carpet. He followed Hawkeye's lead, walking where he did and stopping when he stopped. He noticed that on the ground there were certain markers telling them which part of the media the camera in front of them represented. He was surprised when Hawkeye skipped past the first two without so much of a glance. He didn't get a good look at the marker, but he's curious why they were worth the skip. Finally, they stopped in front of a person holding a microphone on their side of the barricade. They were short, shorter than Green, with cropped short black hair held back by a beanie. They were in a purple suit and white shoes. Very Hero Association, if Green got an opinion. As soon as they stopped, lights started flashing. He tried his best to pose naturally, mirroring Hawkeye, but with a bit more cute guy mixed in. He rolled his eyes at the guy in the crowd getting yelled at for pushing, and even more flashes went off. After a majority war, though, Hawkeye stepped forward towards the reporter, who was speaking into the camera. Hello and welcome back to Channel 10, to Amy's Hot Teen Morning Show. We are finally at the main course right here, Hot Guy and Cute Guy. They had an accent like his. He noticed as he sidled up next to Hawkeye. They quickly turned to the heroes, squealing in delight seeing them both there. He just nervously smiled and waved goodbye at them. Why, hello, Amy. Been a long time since I've seen you. How's the girlfriend? Hawkeye leaned into the mic while looking directly at the camera. The poor reporter went bright red, stuttering about how they were well together. Oh, you charmer. We are all here to talk about you, not me, they countered. which made Hawkeye throw his head back with a distinguished bark of laughter. He suddenly reached around and pulled Green further in front of himself. I think you'll find that this morning's more about us and him more than me. He is the real star of the show. You should have seen his audition. Absolute powerhouse with a bow and arrow. Though never better than me, I'll tell ya. Suddenly, an elbow found its way into Hawkeye's side, accompanied by an oof, as well as the poor hero wasn't expecting it. Serves him right, Green thinks. He'd rather talk about himself, thank you very much. The reporter's eyes were wide and their mouth was dropped into a small O. Green cleared his throat. Right, if he was going to try and command attention like a good hero should, then he should try and keep it too. Hi, I'm him, Cute Guy, the new partner of the critically acclaimed hero Hawkeye, and I'd say my pro skills are at a very similar level with Hawkeye, if not better. He gave a small giggle at the end of his sentence, watching Hawkeye recover his voice. He felt weirdly proud, like, where did that come from? Didn't even stutter. The reporter, Amy, recovered and got to him before Hawkeye. Well, hello, they said excitedly, recovering quickly. It's an honor to meet you, Cute Guy. I think I can speak for the whole Hermit Empire when I say that it was quite the surprise when we found out last night that Hawkeye got a partner. I think we are all dying to know. Firstly, pronouns and preferred name. The question made Green smile. Out of all the questions he expected, this was a nice first one to get. He could see why Hawkeye beelined for their mic. Well, first off, thank you for asking. And secondly, Cute Guy is perfectly fine by me. And any of its variants. Thirdly, I use he/him no matter how I dress. He followed Hawkeye's lead and looked right into the camera as he smiled. It was getting easier to tune out the other flashes of cameras around him as long as he focused on this one. Of course. Hawkeye, any changes we should know of? They point the mic closer to Hawkeye, awaiting a response. Same as always for me, Amy. Thanks for checking, though. He gave finger guns to the camera, which made Green grimace. That would not be something he would be doing. Alrighty, I've already kept you guys for a bit over my time, so one last question for the cutie. From our bidder poll, the world wants to know, what is your power and is it similar to Hawkeye's? They pointed the mic straight at Green as he smirked and laughed. He leaned in close as if it was sharing a secret. They all leaned in, waiting for his response with bated breath. He cleared his throat for dramatic effect. I actually have 0 powers. Everything I do is because of my avian nature and hours of practice. He finished, pulling back and bumping into Hawkeye, who looked as if he were holding a laugh. Again, the reporter looked stunned, but as their job required them to do so, they recovered quickly. That is amazing! Congratulations! And I know we all can't wait to see the good you'll do for the city. They say before spinning back to talking to the camera some more. Something about the amazing opportunity and some interesting answers. He, along with Hawkeye, continued to walk down the carpet, stopping whenever Hawkeye knew they should. The next few they just took pictures for, and no interviews. Just to be cheeky, in one picture he pulled Hawkeye's bow, stretching the string as he leaned away from Hawkeye as he held it. He just held a smug look as Hawkeye tried to be mad at him. But no matter what Green did, Hawkeye just looked proud somehow. And to be honest, Green was feeling a bit proud of himself too. He was so unbelievably worried for this day, and being seen by so many people. But this isn't nearly as bad as he pictured. In between pictures and interviews, Green would walk up to the barricade with Hawkeye. He saw how Hawkeye would reach over and shake a few hands, maybe lay a kiss on a few. He would ask a few non-invasive questions, and even sign a few pictures or notebooks. After a few moments, Green started to as well, much to Hawkeye's excitement. While saying goodbye to a very kind boy he had met, Green heard an annoying voice shout their way. Hawkeye! Hawkeye! Over here! Bird Girl too! He was just about to walk by like Hawkeye had said to do, but was stopped by the man himself. When he looked over, Hawkeye just sighed, while he looked at the reporter calling them over. He tilted his head to whisper into Green's ear. If he wasn't so curious, he would have been more weirded out by the amount of flashes that went off at that. We have to talk with him, unfortunately. Just let me do the talking and just get this over with, he murmured, barely loud enough over the crowd. He turned to look over at the reporter. The man was dressed in an ill-fitted black suit. He had Hawkeye sunglasses on, along with a fedora. He was using his phone as a microphone, and his friend with a separate phone as his camera. Not one to judge, he confidently walks over to the two with his head held high and his wings tucked in tight. Why, hello there, Damien. It has sure been a while since I've seen you, Hawkeye smiled, though Green could tell it was the most forced smile he had seen all night. It made him curious what this guy was about, if he got a reaction like that from the Hawkeye. Too long, I'd say, he all but shouted. He then turned to his camera, addressing it instead of the two heroes. What's up, damnation? I just got unbanned from hero debuts to bring you, my millions of devoted fans, the real details about the heroes we want to know. The cameraman was moving the camera around so it looked around so much it was giving Green vertigo. And he's a bird. Look at these two guys, the hero of the hour and his new so-called partner. Let's see what juicy details we can get out of her. Who knows what freaky stuff Hawkeye might get up to? He then turns back to them, Hawkeye holding back another sigh. He sends Green a look which, without his eyes, he can only interpret to mean not to yell at this guy. But Green could already feel his blood starting to boil, and it was starting in his fingertips. But he just saw Hawkeye shake his head back at him. Fine, he won't go ballistic, but he won't take lying down either. Sure, Hawkeye was supposed to take care of the talking to this guy, but it wouldn't hurt if he said a few words, probably. He smiled at Hawkeye, which just made him shake his head harder, but the decision was already made. He flipped his smile onto kind and leaned down to speak into the phone mic. He batted his eyelashes and tilted his head to the side. The reporter also leaned in, looking at Green's lips as they parted before he spoke. I am a man, he said simply into the mic, leaning back with a threatening smile. Oh, and this cute guy, not Bird Girl. Nice try, though. I know reading can be hard for some people. Green brought a claw up, inspecting his talons, even though they were covered by gloves. This was fun. It was much easier to talk to assholes than nice people anyways. Less to censor. The reporter gawked for a moment, looking between Hawkeye and him as if he were going to help him. Realistically, Hawkeye probably should have done something. Insulting media reporters probably wasn't the best way to gain the support of the public, but Hawkeye was busy holding back his laugh, try and help the reporter out of the hole he had dug himself. Somehow the man recovered, shaking his head and moving on as if nothing happened. Sure, cute guy, but what's your real name? Really? Had this guy not gotten the message the first time? But before he could pile on the sass, Hawkeye spoke up. Really, Damon? Has that worked on any heroes ever? He laughed. The man just shrugged, laughing nervously with him. He kept looking back at Green as if he were going to jump him. Honestly, depending on his next question, he might. Okay. Final question for the Flog family. Who's the top? Green's jaw dropped. How dare he ask such a question? He looked at Hawkeye, who just looked disappointed. He started to walk away, dragging Green along, ready to ignore the question. Hell no! Green pulled his arm out of Hawkeye's hand, turning to look directly into the camera and talk clearly into the mic. Your mother, he shouted as Hawkeye actually grabbed his shoulder and pulled him along, but he wasn't done. And she's huge! Finally, Hawkeye pulled him fully away, leaving the stupid reporter left in whatever emotional devastation he just caused. Finally, on the next set of reporters, they stopped for pictures, and then Hawkeye finally let go, both of Green and his breath. He doubled over, surprising Green. He was laughing harder than he probably should have been in such a place. Green just threw on a smile, acting like he told the funniest jokes so the media wouldn't have something to frame well. It took Hawkeye 3 more people before he finally calmed down enough to talk to another reporter. He was catching his breath when he leaned down to talk into Green's ear again. I've been wanting to do that for years. Birdie, you have no idea. He giggled again. Cub is going to be so pissed. He stood back up, pointing ahead of them a bit. They only had about half a block left until the stairs that led up to the stage. We only have time for 2 more interviews before the speeches, so let's get over with these, yeah? He smiled, pulling him over to a man speaking Spanish into a live camera. He had glasses and slicked back dark brown hair. When he noticed the 2 of them walking up, he turned to them with a bright smile. Hola, chicos. ¿Cómo están? He asks, holding a purple mic between them. Hola, Mariana. We are great. Thanks for coming out today. Hawkeye replies smoothly, reaching to shake the guy's hand. Bien. I will make it easy for you guys today. Only one question for Mr. Cute Guy. After he shakes Hawkeye's hand, he pretends his grip was very strong, waving his hand out like it hurt. Hawkeye laughs, shaking his head at his antics. It makes Green smile as well. Just because it's one question doesn't mean it'll be easy, Green counters, hoping to gain a laugh, which he's surprised when he does. Both Hawkeye and Mariana laugh jovially. You might be right. My only question for you is why did you want to become a hero? He asks, tilting the mic closer to Green. Oh, Mariana may have hit the nail on the head with that one. That question was not easy. You certainly had the answer he gave the heroes at his audition. He also had the real answer, and then he had the real answer. 3 different stories, yet only one of them was the one he can actually tell. So he retells a simplified version of what he told the heroes. When I was really young during the Mycelium War, I was saved by a hero when my parents were missing. Ever since then, I wanted to follow in the footsteps of that hero. I've been trying to get an audition for years. I'm proud to say I was never expecting to land being Hawkeye's partner, but here we are. He finished with a smile. He was speaking to the camera, making sure to keep his voice soft and even. Sure, he was lying, but the world didn't need to know that. Ah, what a beautiful answer from the new hero's partner, Cute Guy. I don't want to keep you too long. I look forward to meeting again. He holds out his hand to Green, who takes it with a light shake. He does the same joke he did with Hawkeye, though, making them both laugh as they walk away to the last marker on the ground. They pose nicely one last time before walking up to the frazzled-looking news anchor. She was dressed in long, floor-length dark purple dress, but before they could even get up to her, Cub came down the stairs, waving them over. Looking at each other, they both shrugged at the same time and walked over to him. Not that the anchor even noticed. We are running behind schedule. Stand here. I'm going to get Starvoid to start announcing you guys, and do the whole before speech like he normally does. Don't move. For the first time, Cub sounds a bit stressed when talking. Usually he is calm and collected, nothing betraying how stressful a situation it might be. He turns and leaves them at the steps of the stage. Looking behind himself, He sees many of the reporters turning away from the sidewalk and pushing to get closer to the front of the stage. A few stay where they were, pointing the cameras at him, and Hawkeye still hoping for a killer shot. Unfortunately for them, there was no time to give them an exclusive, as the voice of Starvoid echoed down the street. From where they were, it was a bit hard to make out exactly what he was saying, but Green caught something about taking on 3 sidekicks, but only one of them being debuted today. A few things about his audition, maybe? And then the crowd erupted, seemingly out of nowhere. It made him jump, wings flapping behind to steady himself. Hawkeye just pulled his arm onto his, having him grab onto him like he had been doing, and walking them both up the stairs. On the stage were all the heroes he had and hadn't met, all standing behind a single podium on stage. As Green and Hawkeye finally stepped up the last stair, the crowd somehow got even louder. He was on the side closest to them, so he was who they all saw first. Turning to face them, he was stunned. The whole street for the next several blocks were packed with people. Screaming fanatics with phones lifted, taking pictures of them. Of him. Okay, so maybe he wasn't actually getting used to this. He waited for Hawkeye to face the crowd with him before holding his arm again. Like always, the hero raised his hands and smiles at the crowd. Almost everyone waves back. He laughs and continues to wave, silently encouraging Green to do the same. So he follows along, waving at a few people in particular, since he can make eye contact with them when Hawkeye can't. Those people particularly practically salute and the acknowledgement. And it makes him feel weird, but this is being a hero, he supposes. Hawkeye pulls him lightly over to the podium. Starvoid claps him on the back kindly as he lets the hero and his new sidekick take over. Without actually speaking a word, he turns and walks over to the other heroes and stands next to Tech and the hero he has never met. Why, hello there, beautiful people of Hermit Empire. He paused as the crowd cheered, speaking again when they calmed down a bit. It is a great honor that I come here today and announce my apprentice, the pupil I have taken under my wing. As he continued talking, Green just kept scanning the crowd. That is so many people, like a ridiculous amount of people who put their lives on hold to come watch a speech from some random dude. Well, it isn't really just some random dude. It's the #1 hero in the Hero Association, and his brand new sidekick. A sidekick that the #1 hero has never had. Sure, maybe it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, but still, way too many people. He scans the faces of people that he used to scan at night, patrolling and making sure these people were safe walking home at night, helping them carry groceries and cross the street, and now here he is, in front of at least half of them, if not more. Somehow, some way, he's not viciously overwhelmed. He feels somewhat confident. The longer he stands up here and seeing faces to protect, he feels slightly welcomed. Like this is what he's meant to do, or that he's done it before all his life. A weird feeling of deja vu hits him, but for the life of him, he can't remember where from. He finally turns to look back at Hawkeye. Somehow the hero is still talking. Turning back on what he's talking about makes him sneer. And after I saw what a magnificent archer he was at his audition, I just knew he would be perfect to protect this wonderful people of this city. Furthermore, with a sudden burst of confidence, Hawkeye finds his mouth full of feathers, and he's being pushed aside of the podium. You talk a lot, Green says, purposefully loud enough for the mic to pick up, but still directed at Hawkeye. He felt the audience gasp, but all shocked at his audacity to use his wings to push Hawkeye away. But as Hawkeye spits out a feather, they start laughing. Hawkeye pretends to be mad, but again, all Green can see is pride. Hello, all. My name is Cute Guy, and I have been working in Hermit Empires for as long as I remember. I'm excited to be partnered with Hawkeye, and I'm grateful to be a hero. I will work my hardest to protect you all, while learning what it truly means to be a hero. This is an opportunity that I must prove to you, and I won't stop till every single one of you knows you are safe as long as we are around.
Thank you all for your support. He holds his hand in a heart shape before turning to Hawkeye. And that's a speech, small guy. Again, just loud enough for the crowd to hear and erupt in roaring laughter. He smiled cheekily to Hawkeye, who did have a little hint of embarrassment on his face. His cheeks slightly red at being the butt of the joke. Where he would have been pissed a week ago, he's now proud of Green speaking up. He holds his hand out to Green, who took it. They both walk across the stage and down the stairs of the other side. He heard Starboy take up the mic again, but the rest of the heroes were following them off as well. On the other side at the bottom of the steps, Cub was waiting. He had his arms crossed and a puckered look on his face. Frankly, he looked pissed. It made Green pause. Why was he upset? He knew he had been pushing his luck. Did he finally go too far with the wing stuff? It's always the wings. Nowadays, he forgets himself in public. He looks to Hawkeye, who continues to pull him down the stairs. He looks ecstatic, smiling brightly and a pep in his step, walking straight past Cub with barely even a glance. He ushered them quickly into another black-tinted car, the two shoving themselves in the same seats as last time. Cub got in last, and as soon as he closed his door, the car took off back to the Hero Tower. Somehow, luckily, even though there were thousands of people on the street trying to get to their cars or home, they had almost a smooth ride back. It was only a few minutes to get back to the Hero Tower as opposed to the 5 or 10 it took the first time. The entire time Green felt a wound tight anxiety dripping off him in wafts. Cub had not spoken a word, yet Hawkeye seemed oblivious, or maybe purposefully unobservant. It felt like a big whiplash. He went from the fantastic high of a job well done to the oppressive aura of possibly pissing someone off. He's not quite sure what he could have done. He was with Hawkeye the whole time. And there was nothing that would have gotten them in trouble. Okay, well, maybe there were a few things he had done today that were not strictly within Cub's parameters of conduct. The vehicle rolled to a stop. Hawkeye immediately opened the vehicle. Unfortunately, the door was surrounded in a blue haze, then slammed shut, forcing Hawkeye's hand back. Green raised an eyebrow. Alright, that was a bit dramatic even for him, but it certainly didn't help to stew with anxious thoughts, a feeling swirling in his mind and stomach. He started to fiddle with his claws, if only to just get out of some of the nervous energy in the tinted car. I can't believe you two, Cub said through gritted teeth. I know, we did so well. I'm so proud of Green. I also missed talking to Amy. Hawkeye bragged, waving his hand nonchalantly, as if the words about to get chewed out by their PR manager. No, Cub interrupted. Hawkeye pouted, but stopped talking. He seemed more confused when Cub spoke again. I think you guys alone to conduct interviews without my help, and you insult a reporter and his mother on camera. Green grimaced, looking down to his feet, his leg bouncing nervously. Okay, so maybe he could have tried to hold his tongue. God damn it. Somehow, within the 2 weeks he had been here, he managed to piss Cub off. Twice. Not only that, but you two are the most oblivious when it comes to posting together, and the other angles that may have been taken advantage of. You two are partners, a hero and a sidekick, not anything more, especially to the media. You have no idea how much work you've made for me to fix this, especially you, Green. Green jumped at hearing his name. He felt like a child getting scolded, and honestly, what was happening wasn't too far off. Hitting and insulting Hawkeye in front of the press as if they don't think he's the man who gave you a job. As much as I love the bickering behind closed doors, I know you two are good friends now. You leave it at the doors. People are going to be pissed. And now I have to fix it. Cub had turned around in his seat, eyeing the two who just kept looking at each other awkwardly. Green, you have to be careful right now. Hawkeye is established and people love him. You are new, and nobody knows you at all. It would be so easy for people to hate you so quickly, and there would be nothing I could do. Then people won't even accept your help if they are in trouble because they don't trust you. He finished his speech while Green swallowed thickly. He never thought of it like that. People were smiling and laughing with him while he was out there. He supposed he wasn't really looking to see if there were those who weren't. He turned his face, expecting to see an agitated look on Hawkeye's face, as he put both their reputations on the line. But all he saw was Hawkeye purse his lips, holding in a smile. Did he not find this as serious as he did? His chest felt like it was about to explode where Hawkeye was laughing. I think you'll find that Damien deserved it, and it will blow over if something is wrong in like a week. Media moves on quickly, so don't worry so much. Be proud of Cute Guy for how good he did. I know I am, Cub. His speech was killer and everyone laughed when he said those things to me. He went out there so scared and came out with poise and confidence. Taking the wind from his sail is not cool. He did fantastic. He presented some truly inspiring jazz hands trying to persuade Cub, but judging by the Vex's face, it wasn't working. After an awkward silence where Green just looks between the two, hoping just to leave the car and think about all of this much, much later, and preferably in his nest alone. Cub broke first, sighing heavily, turning back forward in his seat. You two have approximately 2 hours before you must report for patrol. Spend it how you wish. I'm going to try my best to fix it. And with that, Cub leaves the car, shutting the door softly and pushing through the crowd without waiting. Welp, Hawkeye said, popping the pea. That could have gone better. His smile ever dropped, encouraging Green to give a small hesitant smile as well. We have a few hours, so let's grab brunch and talk some shop. I just know the cafeteria is empty right now. He bounced out of his seat and out the door, leaving Green alone with the poor driver. The door on his side opened, revealing Hawkeye offering his hand like before. Not wanting to be in his car any longer, he takes his hand and steps out into the crowd, screaming his name and taking even more pictures. He smiles like last time and hopes they can't tell it doesn't reach his eyes. Luckily, Hawkeye keeps hold of his hand, guiding him through the crowd with almost no issue. As soon as they step through the door, and the voice level drops, the doors remain open but no one follows them in, and they both breathe out a sigh. Green feels his hands still shaking and the pit in his chest still vibrating with the anxiety he feels. Green turns to Hawkeye, opening his mouth to ask about what the hell just happened. But before he can get a word out, he sees Hawkeye shake his head, still looking at him with a pasted smile. He shuts his mouth confused. Green pulls them both to the elevator quietly, waiting for the doors to open. Hawkeye is bouncing on his heels as he waits, but Green still feels a bit like shit. He has no idea how Hawkeye is so calm right now. Cub was really mad at them. Well, more so just him, he supposed. But that honestly just made it worse. Finally, the doors open and they walk in. As soon as the door closes, Green watches as Hawkeye's shoulders drop. He lets out a long sigh as his smile finally drops, shaking out his hands at his sides as if reliving built-up energy. Green feels the same in that regard, but also, what the fuck? Again, the whiplash! Watching Cub turn into PR manager, and now watching Hawkeye become Scar, he doesn't think he'll ever get used to, nor have such a dramatic mask to remove at the end of the day. He hopes so, at least. Overall, that went really well, I'd say, Scar says, leaning against the wall holding his hand to his mouth to yawn, which in turn makes Green yawn against his will. Scar just laughs at him as a little annoyed chirp escapes, but the smile fades when Green slaps the hand over his mouth at the sound. He resolutely closes his mouth, letting no more bird calls to escape. That's one of the things Cub was mad at, right? The wings and stuff? Scar looked at him confused, tilting his head to the side as if trying to understand why the sudden back off of natural avian calls. Green has also been oddly quiet since they got in the elevator. Maybe Scar was finally catching on? Are you okay? Scar frowns, tilting his head to the side. Green just shakes his head, dropping his arms and pulling his wings in tighter. Scar's frown deepens. You did amazing today, seriously. You surprised me when you actually started talking to people and signing things. I didn't start doing that for so long without Watcher and Red helping me. You should be celebrating, not worrying about Cub. He bumps their shoulders together, flashing a kind smile. It calms Green's racing heart and lessens the weight of the ball in his chest. He did think he was doing really well today, and honestly, if there was an issue with the way he acted, then that's a them problem, because he is who he is. He breathes out a long sigh, then takes a deep breath in. Scar's right. He's a badass, and he can deal with Cub tomorrow. Thanks, is all Green says, leaning his head on Scar's shoulder as they wait the rest of the ride to the car. Cub sure scared the shit out of him earlier, but hopefully the rest of the day will be better. Finally, they made it to the cafe, which was in fact completely empty. They both heard each other's stomachs growl at the scent of food, causing them both to break the residual anxious tension with amused laughs. Green left the elevator first after grabbing a tray, making a beeline for the avian safe food, and piling on the breakfast food still out. Nobody said being a hero would make him so hungry. After grabbing some water and 2 cups of tea, he made his way to one of the corner tables. It was in the furthest corner from everything, so it should give them a bit of privacy. Even with no one there, he assumed people would be trickling in soon once they got back from the debut as well. He sets down his tray, taking a seat just as Scar pops up again as well. He takes the seat opposite Green, digging into his food as soon as he hits the seat. It makes Green laugh a bit before following his lead and eating as well. So, Green starts as they push their trays away. He grabs the 2 teas he had gotten, handing one to Scar, who gives him a grateful smile and a sip. I guess what Cub said just kind of got to me. Sure, he wasn't as anxious as he was, but it will be hard to let that go now that it's a worm in his ears. Don't worry about him, really. Scar sets his cup down with a small clink. I've known him for years, and he's dealt with much worse when it comes to PR-related blunders. He's just upset that he already has to fix something. But I don't think he'll have to fix anything. You did so well, and everyone will love you. Scar praises, but Green just gives him a small grimace. Well, clearly I didn't do that well if Cub has to fix stuff. He traces his finger around his cup of tea, watching it go round and round. Scar reaches out and grabs his hand, making him look up at Scar's face with a comforting smile. I know this morning was a lot, but don't let that downer set up your own pity party. People will love you. I just know it. I mean, they can never love you as much as me, but maybe you can get close. Green scoffs a laugh, pulling his hand back to playfully slap Scar. He takes it in stride and just laughs along. Green chooses to trust Scar's judgment on this one. The people didn't seem to hate him while he was out there, and if anything, he felt more in his element, so maybe Cub is just the quick to annoy kind of guy. Judging by how easygoing Scar is, he seems like the kind of guy to constantly get on Cub's nerves, so if Scar isn't worried, then Green won't be either. So with a smile, Green and Scar go on a tangent to each other, talking about the different reporters and fans they met. It was such a wild experience for Green, but insanely cool. Green asks some questions about Amy and finds out they are one of the reporters that Hawkeye talks to the most, as they are just the nicest. He also finds out that Damon has always been an issue, always asking the worst questions under the guise of getting the juicy details, when in reality he just treats everyone, including his own fans, awfully. By the time they run out of people to talk about, Green catches the time on Scar's comm. Unfortunately, they should be hitting the road soon to go on patrol. So even though Green really likes the conversation they've been having, he knows he has a few questions he should probably ask before getting on the streets. I have a few questions about, patrolling. Green starts feeling a bit awkward. Yes, we should head out for that soon. Scar checks his comm for the time as well and then sighs. We still have some time, so ask away. Should I have gotten, like, a map or something of the route? Green crossed his arms, leaning back against the seat. You were probably given one with some of the other papers, but I've got the whole route in my brain. It's not huge, so we just go back and forth on that path until we get off at 10 p.m. He folds his arms over the table, holding out onto his cup of tea. 10? We've been up since like 5 a.m. Scar laughs at his exclamation. Well, yes. Usually I don't get up until 11 to patrol until midnight or later. Today is a special occasion. He waves his hand, taking a sip from his cup. Ugh. So he fixed his sleep schedule for no reason, as he was just going to be back to sleeping in the day and patrolling at night. Fantastic. Don't worry. Time flies when you're having fun with Hawkeye. He points at himself with a blinding smile. I sure hope so. Green smirks. Hey! As he pouts, Green watches as he puts his hand back onto the table, catching sight of his respawn bracelet. The very same one strapped to his wrist as well. What about these? Green ignores Scar's pouting in favor of holding his wrist up with the bracelet. Scar pushes his hand in the center of the table, showing off his slightly beaten up respawn band to Green. He leans in closer as Scar points to certain parts. This is a respawn bracelet, and its name is kind of a lie. It's experimental redstone that has just recently been given to every hero and partner, blah blah blah. It's basically an emergency contact. It monitors your heart rate, and if it gets too low, then it will send your core to the association to send you help. In addition, it has a bit of adrenaline in it, so if you are in life or death, it will give you a little boost until help comes. He flips his wrist to show off the clasp on the other side. It can't be taken off without sending a warning to the association. He flips his hand back over, gesturing for Green to give him his hand, which he places gently in his hand. Scar then points to the black square on the top of the wrist. On the side there were 3 dark buttons he never noticed. This one, Scar points to the leftmost button, is the one we use the most. When we capture a bad guy, we press this and then the Hero Association sanctioned officer will show up and take them away. This one, he moves to the next. Green is very intently focused on what these do. It is a distress call. It doesn't mean help will show, but it's nice to think so. Scar said somewhat bitterly, must be a story there. He points to the last button. And this is like a recording device. If you go somewhere and have to get some evidence, press this and talk into it, and it will be saved for up to a week. After that, it will be deleted. He draws back, leaving Green to look at his band. Interesting. So they were just fitted every hero with an experimental bracelet that may or may not help them stay alive? Better than nothing, he supposed. He dropped his hand looking at Scar, who was busy looking at his comm with a slight frown. We've got to get going, unfortunately. We can continue talking as we walk to the patrol route. Scar shuffled out of his seat, grabbing both Green and his tray, tossing them in the trash. Green chugged the rest of his water, and after throwing the cup away, he and Scar made their way back down to the lobby. Green was worried about Scar becoming Hawkeye again, but all he did was plaster a smile on his face as he left the elevator. Again, they end up in the lobby as Scar leads them to the front doors. Wait, we just walk out the front doors? Green asks, confused. He wasn't sure where he was expecting to go, but this feels a little lackluster. Scar must know what he means as he laughs at his confusion. Where else would we leave from? It's a short walk, so we don't use cars, and not all of us can fly. Scar laughs as Green sticks his tongue out at him. Finally, they both walk out onto the uncool-feeling doors to start their shift on patrol. Blinking the sun out of his eyes, he was expecting to be bombarded with people again. And while there were still people milling around the streets and workers picking up the barricade, everyone just seemed to ignore them, looking their way, then quickly looking away once they realized who they were. What happened in the 2 hours they were gone? Suddenly have no attention on them? He decided to just follow Scar, walking down the street onto the sidewalk further and further away from the Hero Tower. They continued to pass person after person, some of whom Green recognized because they were still in cosplay, but each and every one of them just looked away as they walked. Suddenly, Scar took an abrupt turn into an alleyway. It looked well kept, which made sense for the area they were in. The Hero Tower being central to Hermit Empire and everyone everywhere around there being the richer part of the city. Tall apartment towers, way too expensive for Green to have ever considered. Even the people walking around were dressed expensively, in suits and dresses, walking while talking on their phone about things Green would never be able to get his head around. This is the start of my route. We will go in and out of the alleyways and down the streets. It's about a 10-mile radius. I usually can get around twice before midnight, but we don't have until then, so we just do what we can. Scar speaks as he walks. Green following, getting more confused as they walk. And? He speaks up. Scar spins around and continues to walk backwards, somehow expertly avoiding running into people as he guides them from the alley to alley. What's with the people ignoring us? It was making him feel pretty uncomfortable, all of the people ignoring them as much as possible, when literally 2 hours ago he was getting yelled at. Well, ooh, that's a good bakery. He points to a small-looking bakery that smells fantastic, getting distracted. After they pass it, he looks back to Green, who just raises an eyebrow with a smile. Anyways, he continues if nothing happened. Where was I? Oh, it's illegal for people to stop us during our patrols. They can get hella fined for it, so if someone sees the hero in full uniform walking around the city, they typically leave them alone. They turned onto another alley, a few critters scuffling away onto the dumpster. What if someone needs help? Green asks with a frown or shocked. What are they, service dogs? Look but don't touch? Well, of course they can ask for help. He seems appalled at the question. And to be honest, I don't mind taking a few pictures and doing a few autographs when the night is slow. People are just nervous of getting in their way, so they make sure to leave us be, if we're completely dressed up. He guessed that makes sense. There was no way they could do their job well if people just walk up to them whenever they wanted. It felt weird. It did make him feel a little weird that people would get fined money if they just said hello to them. They continued walking for a few hours, not doing much. They broke up a little fight between some teenagers, but otherwise they kept walking, and walking, and walking. The next thing that Green was starting to notice was that how the look of everything never really changed. They stayed in all the good areas, the rich neighborhoods, and high dining places. Is this it? They just make sure that the rich people of the city were safe and never go to the more poorer areas? That makes no sense. Are we staying in the rich area all night? He voices. They had just past the restaurant, and Green thinks if he ate there, the bill would cost more than his whole apartment building. Yep. I have this radius that I stick to. Sometimes it fluctuates, and I will go into somewhere else for a while, but typically I'm always in this area. Being the number one means I handle the number one issues. I don't control where I go. He shrugs. But Green crosses his arms with a sneer. So the number one hero is used to protect rich people's pockets from getting mugged. They really sent their number one hero to the rich city instead of the places that really needed his help, where he was from only a few weeks ago could have really used Hero's Patrol. But here he was guarding rich people's apartment buildings. Well, I know where you're coming from. Scar starts, slowing down a bit to walk next to Green. His voice was low and gentle, not getting mad at Green for asking a loaded question. Continuing to speak with his hands, he guides them back onto the street, walking past expensive restaurants and a few banks as well. And while my nights are dull when it comes to petty crime usually, this area area is a villain hotspot. Just down the road from here is the Big Eye Bank, and I need to be in this area if some villain with snow powers tries to break into an impenetrable vault. Scar laughs sarcastically, but Green feels his face drain of blood. What did you just say? He breathes shakily, clenching and unclenching his numb-feeling hands. Scar seems none the wiser, speaking with a smile while taking them down yet another alley. Oh, it's just a joke from one of the first villain fights I went on with Bodum. A mid-villain named Snowmature tried to rob Big Eye, but once he figured he couldn't do it, he just started wrecking shop. There was so much damage, but luckily only a few people got hurt. Moon and Mighty. Green paused for a second, trying to will his heartbeat to go down. No, it was just a dream. There's no way it actually happened. Scar stopped with him, turning his head to the side with a confused look. Yeah, Moonlight and Mighty got hurt and had to step out of the fight while I helped citizens. Watcher and Redstones were the ones to actually capture Snow. How did you know that? Scar asked. It has to be some weird coincidence. Some really weird coincidence. Finally finding his voice, found that story in the archives. Read something about them getting hurt. Green lied. His wings twitched as he did, drawing Scar's attention to them. He pulled them back in, but not before Green pursed his lips with a frown. Huh, Scar said skeptically. He opened his mouth, probably to ask questions that Green did not have the answers for, but was interrupted by a little meow by their feet. Immediately, Scar's face changed, completely forgetting everything they were talking about. Jelly! He shouted, getting on his knees to pick up and pet the cat, more happily than Green had seen him do anything. Leaning against the wall, Green took this as an opportunity to catch his breath and calm his beating heart. It was just a dream. It had to be. Looking back at Scar and the cat, he realized he recognized it from somewhere. Oh. I've met this cat before, he voiced, crouching next to Scar and reaching his hand out to let the cat sniff him. Hoping that he was remembered, it seems it was his lucky day, as the cat abandoned Scar and went to Green instead. It was the most offended Green thinks he's ever seen Scar, making him laugh and pick up the cat. I met this cat right before my audition, actually, and it looks like they love me more than you. He bragged, hugging the cat round the middle, lifting its paw and shaking it at Scar. I'll have you know, she loves me so much. I raised her and fed her, so she just liked you 'cause you are new, he thought, crossing his arms like a grumpy child. It calmed to Green's heart being like this, laughing at Scar's expense. I'm sure. Why is she out here if you love her so much? Green counters, putting the cat back on the ground. She walks between his crouched legs before going back to Scar, who looks ecstatic. We aren't allowed pets in the Hero Tower, and I think she likes being able to go wherever she likes. But I do bring her in when the weather is bad and during the winter. It's hard to keep her a secret, but I can't just leave her be. I found her as a sick kitten on one of the first patrol I had to do alone. After I nursed her back to health, she joined me on patrols ever since. He plays with Jelly as he talks, not even paying attention to anything else. Green hums, standing back up to lean against the wall. He just watches as Scar plays for a few more minutes, and a small smile on his face. Finally, when he stands back up, they continue on their patrol. But from then on, Jelly walks with them, only sometimes she will chase after mice and other rodents before coming straight back. Scar explained a few buildings and fights he had around them years previous as they walked for the next hour. It was very boring, but being with Scar and Jelly helped a bit. He couldn't imagine being Scar a few weeks ago having to do this alone. Usually when he went out on patrol in his old area, he had plenty to do all night. Between muggings and fights, confused old people, he had a lot to do every night. And even on slower nights, he could always fly around and practice his shots in the trash yard. But tonight, they had literally done nothing. their shift and whatever it was called, and they had done nothing. Green sighed, kicking a rock down the road. The sun had gone down a while ago, and both Green and Scar were very obviously tired. Quieting down a while, and now just walking up and down the streets, following Scar's lead. We are getting to the end of my route now. I usually turn around up here. He continued to walk down the street as Scar pointed to an alley a bit away. Honestly, from there we can go straight home. It'll be our time by the time we get back to the tower. Tomorrow morning, Cub will have us for an actual debriefing of the debut earlier today. Now that Green was looking around, the area was getting a little more or less taken care of the further they walked away from the Hero Tower. Typical, but it sucks that they turn around right as the city gets worse for wear. Nodding quietly, they continued down the path and into the alleyway. It was way less maintained than the other roads and alleyways that they had been down. He rubbed his hand down under his eye, hoping it wouldn't mess up his makeup too bad. They had been up for a very long time, and he was very tired. Scar picked up Jelly and walked closer next to Green, shoulder to shoulder. They sleepily smiled at each other and Jelly, walking out of the alley and back towards the tower. All of a sudden, Green's ear feathers flicked up at the sound behind them. It made him pause his steps next to Scar, stopping him as well. It had all been but silent since the sun had gone down. Everyone was going home and sleeping, like he wished he was. But the loud bang and a cut-off scream that came from the alley right outside of where they turned around, he woke up right quick. He turns to look at Scar with wide eyes, but the hero was just looking at him weird. "Did you hear that?" Green asks, spinning around and listening harder, his feathers spreading out a bit. "No. What was it?" Scar put Jelly down, pulling his bow over his head and gripping it tightly. "I heard a scream, I think." Green also pulls on his bow, nodding to Scar and leading him down to where he heard something. "Down this way." Jelly had disappeared somewhere, which was probably for the best. They quietly came up to the alleyway and leaned around the corner to see what was going on. Unfortunately, Green heard right. It was a dead-end alley surrounded by brick walls. Clearly this was out of Hawkeye's radius, because it didn't look very well cleaned up. They leaned around a dumpster, seeing the scene before them. Against the brick wall at the end of the alley was a tall person in heels and a skirt, cowering from a large man shouting at them. The man had a knife against the person's throat as they felt around the person's body for their pockets. "Throw your shit on the ground! All of it!" they slurred. Cute Guy could see he was wobbling where he was stood, probably drunk. He sneered, looking around the alley to see how safe it would be to shoot in the area. By glancing round, he noticed around 30 feet up there was a rusted balcony hanging over them on the right building. Formulating a plan, his eyes shot back up when he heard the poor person whimpering as the man stumbled into them, possibly cutting them a bit. Hawkeye, hearing it as well, took a step past the dumpster, about to rush the man mugging the random citizen. But Cute Guy's hand shot out, holding back a shake of his head. He brought a hand to his lips and pointed to the sky with a smile. "Trust me," he mouthed at Hawkeye. Hawkeye nodded back, willing to trust. Cute Guy took a step back and silently threw himself into the air. He quickly turned and glided to the balcony above, landing quietly on the railing, pulling an arrow from his quiver and taking aim. He turned to look at Hawkeye, who had a smile on his face. He watched as Hawkeye kept his bow in his hand, walking into the alley with a nonchalant jaunt. "Well, good evening, fellas. How's it going?" he asked, flashing a blinding smile. The man immediately turned away from the person to Hawkeye, brandishing his knife in this direction. Hawkeye kept a smile and raised his hands in a placating manner. "There's no need for that, my friend." "You don't belong here, hero bitch," the man slurred. Cute guy rolled his eyes. The man continued to wave the knife around, trying to be as intimidating as possible. Rolling his eyes, Cute guy started looking around further. He ended up catching the eyes of the person currently being mugged. They looked terrified, but Cute guy just sent them a comforting smile and moved his hand to show them to be quiet. I think you'll find I can go where I like. Listen, we both know how this is gonna go, so just come quietly and we can all forget this even happened. Though I don't think you'll remember it anyways. Hawkeye lowered his arms, taking a step closer to the mugger. Stay the fuck back! I'll kill you both! The man then brandished the knife back to the person against the wall. They scuttered back further, trying to keep themselves away from him. Only a knife and that much audacity. What power do you have? Hawkeye asked. Cute guy saw how he inched his hand to his thigh quiver, fingers grasping an arrow without the man even noticing. None of your fucking business. Honestly, it was getting embarrassing at this point. The man could barely stand straight, yet he was so confident he would get out of this somehow. Before Cute Guy could even blink, his arrow was flying at the man. For a second, Cute Guy worried his hand slipped and the arrow was his. He was shocked to find Hawkeye's stance to fire, yet a arrow missing from the bow. Following its line of fire, he is further surprised to find it hovering midair with a red-pink hue around it. It was frozen a foot away between the man's wide eyes. Ah, low-level telekinesis, Hawkeye stated unconcerned. He lowered his bow and continued to step closer. Makes sense you need a knife. Can't fight with a power like that. Low level? You know, the best way to get someone to reveal their power is to put them in immediate danger. If their power can, it will save them. Hawkeye interrupted the guy, stopping 10 feet away and leveling his bow at the man once again. I'll fucking show you, low level. The man threw his knife at Hawkeye, making him have to dodge out of the way or risk getting hit. And while they were both distracted, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a flask. He took a large swig of it before Cute Guy remembered himself and let his arrow fly, striking the flask through the center and knocking it out of his hand. It struck the ground, the milky white liquid spilling out, pooling on the ground. Ew, he's never seen alcohol that looked like that. The man immediately looked to the balcony, seeing Cute Guy, who met his eyes with a smile and a wave. I saw you on TV today. Didn't know they let Bubblegum Bitch out yet. He gritted his teeth and suddenly thrust his hand up, glowing red. But before Cute Guy could even have a witty response, the man turned around with their back to Hawkeye and thrust their hand towards the unfortunate victim's throat. They also started to glow as their feet lifted off the ground by their neck. Their hand raised, clawing at their throat with choked wheezes sliding past their lips. A few things happened at once. Cute Guy felt his eyes widened, realizing what was happening, so he flew down to the street below, placing himself between the man and the person in the skirts, pushing them back. Their hand continued to glow, so Cute Guy took it and twisted around, trying to pin it behind their back. As he spun around the man's, he felt the air millimeters away from his ear feathers grow suddenly cold, followed by the telltale whistle of a closed arrow. Before Cute Guy could process what he heard, there was an arrow in the man's shoulder, and the red aura was gone. He heard the person fall onto the ground, their knees buckled as they held their throat, coughing and wheezing on concrete. He kicked out the knee of the still blubbering man, taking him to the ground and laying him on his front. He was still trying to fight, though very uncoordinated, so Cute Guy lifted his bow and fired 3 consecutive arrows around the man, pinning him by his clothes to the concrete ground. He then spun on his heel and fell to his knees to help the person. You dumb bitch! I'll kill you! You and your little big bitch! Somehow the idiot was still struggling to get free, even with an arrow in his shoulder. Cute Guy looked over his shoulder to see Hawkeye with a pissed off look. He was walking to the man, so Cute Guy decided to let him handle it, even if he was hesitant. Hey, what's your name? He asked, helping them sit up. Yeah, Alistair? They coughed into their hands, still holding onto their throats. Their deep voice cracked on the first syllable as they spoke. Cute Guy grimaced. That's definitely one of the bruise. Hello, Alistair. Sorry this has happened tonight. Other than the obvious, are you hurt anywhere else? Cute Guy looked them over and didn't see anything outside, but being hurt on the inside wasn't something that he could fix. No, just shaken, they croaked, planting their hands on the ground. And with Cute Guy's help, they stood on their feet. Cute Guy grabbed their purse, placing the spilled items back inside before handing it back. That's good. Can I help you get home safely? Did I? Cute Guy eyed the weird flask. The transparent white substance had almost evaporated, but it was still dripping every once in a while from the opening. He turned his nose up. Whatever it was, it made people act like dumbasses. I already pressed the respawn bracelet. Go ahead and get them home, and then we can head out, Hawkeye said. Cute Guy looked over his shoulder to see Hawkeye had the man on the ground, surprisingly silent. He had his hand tied behind his back, laying down on his face with the arrow still in his shoulder. The person spoke, gaining Cute Guy's attention. I live up there. Their voice was sounding better, but still a little strained. Cute Guy could already see the bruising start. The person would point up to the balcony that he had previously used as his perch. Oh man, and you were almost home, huh? Cute Guy said with a side coo. It made the person smile, so it was worth it. Here, can I carry you? He watched as Alistair's cheeks turn a bit red. They looked down at Cute Guy, a bit skeptical. Okay, well, now it's a challenge, he joked, placing his hands on his hips sassily. Alistair tossed their head back with a laugh before nodding in consent at Cute Guy. Picking them up bridal style, Cute Guy quickly flew up to the balcony. He softly placed them on their feet before taking a step onto the railing. They looked surprised, but Cute Guy just smiled back. Hope you have a better night. And ice your neck for those bruises. May we meet again in better circumstances, Alistair. Good night. And with a final wave, Cute Guy jumps back down into the alleyway below. He hears a quiet goodbye, followed by a sliding door opening and then closing. Looking back to Hawkeye, he sees a black-tinted car had pulled up, and Hawkeye was showing the man inside. He slams the door behind him, knocking on the truck, and the vehicle takes off. Suddenly, they were left in the quiet night once more. Hawkeye turns to him with a long, drawn-out sigh. He lifts his sunglasses and rubs at his eyes before putting them back. Even though his eyes never opened, Green still averted his gaze just in case. It used to be out of respect. Now it's out of fear what he'd see. He swallows thickly, and they both quietly turn around and start walking home. What was that? Hawkeye hit that guy with an arrow? When it could definitely be solved with no bloodshed. Not only that, he almost shot him. A few millimeters away, and that arrow would have been in his wings. Hawkeye sighs again, but this time he opens his mouth and speaks as well. Next time, maybe try not to jump in front of my shots, he jokes. Unfortunately, it was not the correct thing to say to a tired, irritated Green. Me? What do you mean? You shot that guy! He explodes, waving his hands around as his wings flap. He was hurting that person, he said calmly. I did what I had to. It wasn't a deadly shot, and that guy is now in jail. Green lets out a long breath. Do you just shoot anyone because you had to? He asked through gritted teeth. Scar side-eyes him, hesitating before answer. Listen, typically no, but the Hero Association would honestly not care if I did use more force. He waves his hand as he speaks, which does not help the fact that Green can almost feel his blood boiling. Not helping your case, Green huffs, shaking his head to the side. Hawkeye drops his hands into his pockets, looking at the ground with a soft sigh. If it makes you feel better, I know that the best way to get telekinesis power to release is through pain. Even when you pushed them away, he was still choking the victim, and would have continued until they either stopped themselves or had power damned cuffs on, or they get hurt. Oh, that makes sense. Every time he fought a telekinetic before as a vigilante, he supposed they did get hurt before they stopped. He had thought Hawkeye just hit him because it would have made an easy takedown. Not that he formulated a plan and he had almost gotten in the way. Maybe they should communicate more. Green's shoulders drop off their tension. He should have trusted Hawkeye. Anyways, Hawkeye stares, still watching the ground as they walk. I'm honestly more concerned about how they went from a low-level powered to a mid-level that quickly. I know they were low level, you can tell from the color of the aura, but they could never have picked up someone as a low level. But after they drank whatever was in that flask, it was like their power doubled. It was weird. I highly doubt normal milk did that. He shakes his head and turned to look Green with a confused look. Well, if they were low level, I thought you said Cub was low level. Green questions as he knows that Cub and has multiple things at once midair with barely even a thought. I lied. It's a joke between me and Cub. He's actually one of the strongest I've ever met. But he's just not a fighter, so PR is all he does for the Hero Association. Scar crosses his arms and tilts his head back to look at the sky. You can see many stars in the city, but it's nice to try. I just don't understand how he did it. Maybe it was whatever he drank, like a drug or something, Green suggested. He knew many of the drugs that were on the streets. He had taken down a couple big dealers in his day, but he hadn't really heard of a drug that would increase power level. Maybe it was like a steroid? Maybe. There might be something in the archive, but honestly, with our mission tomorrow, we probably won't have time to look into it. Scar drops his arm with a shrug. The rest of the walk back was silent, both men too tired to hold conversation. At this point, Julie started walking by their sides, and after a quick pet break, and they continued on their way. Honestly, Green almost ditched Scar and flew back, but that would be rude, so he stuck it out. Finally, the Hero Tower came into view, and all Green could think about was taking a long, hot shower and passing out in his nice, soft nest. All just to get ready to do it again tomorrow. And that is the end of Chapter 9.